All right, so the last chapter ended with Henry and Beezus returning a wagon full of gum to the alley because Henry couldn't sell anymore. He had made a couple bucks for his bike fund, um, but then school kind of cracked down on the gum chewing, and it was more trouble than it was worth. So now we are on chapter 3, The Untraining of Ribsy. One Saturday afternoon, Henry was sitting on the front steps, amusing Ribsy by throwing a stick for him to retrieve. Every time Henry tossed the stick out onto the lawn, Ribsy bounded after it, brought it back, and dropped it at Henry's feet. Then Ribsy wagged his tail and waited for Henry to throw the stick again. Henry decided that since his dog was so smart about fetching sticks, he should teach him to bring something useful, like his dad's slippers. While Henry and Ribsy were playing, Scooter McCarthy rode up on his bike and tossed the Huggins copy of the newspaper onto the grass. "Hey, say Huggins," he said, "I'm going to scout camp during April vacation next week, and I wonder if you know anybody I could get to take my paper route while I'm gone." Henry tossed the stick for Ribsy again. "I'll take it, Scooter. I've always wanted to deliver newspapers." Scooter looked doubtful. "Ah, you're not old enough, Huggins." Henry knew that newspaper carriers for the Journal had to be 11 years old, but he said, "It wouldn't matter for 3 days, would it? It would still be your route. I'd just be a substitute." "Oh, come on, Scooter. Let me do it." "You don't have a bike," said Scooter, "and I could only pay you a couple bucks." "I could walk," said Henry. "It's all right about the money." He wouldn't admit it to Scooter, but he thought a couple bucks would be a lot of money to add to his bike fund all at once. "Please, Scooter, I won't make any mistakes or anything." "I got some pretty cross customers on my route," warned Scooter. "That old Mrs. Jones calls the newspaper office if just one teeny corner of her paper gets in the mud. And Mrs. Green gets mad if I throw the papers in her flower boxes. You got to be careful when you deliver newspapers." "Oh, I could do it," said Henry. "I'd be real careful, honest I would." "Well," Scooter thought for a minute. "All right, you can take the paper route, but you better not get me in trouble. I'll give you a list of customers next week." "Gee, thanks," said Scooter gratefully. "Jeepers, a couple more bucks for his bike fund." Henry made up his mind he'd do such a good job delivering papers that Scooter would want him to take the route when he went away during summer vacation. Then he'd really make some money. Oh, he could see himself walking down Klickitat Street, throwing papers onto porches with an experienced flip of his wrist. Still better, he pictured himself riding down the street on a shiny red bike with his snap-on raccoon tail floating from the handlebars. Oh boy, he was getting closer to that bike all the time. Then he noticed the tightly rolled newspaper lying on the lawn. That gave him an idea. Instead of training Ribsy to fetch his dad's slippers, he'd teach him to bring the newspaper every night. "Fetch, Ribsy," he said. "Fetch the paper." Ribsy, though, sat thumping his tail on the lawn. "Oh, come on." Henry picked up the paper and held it under Ribsy's nose. Then he threw it. Still, Ribsy sat. He was used to fetching sticks, not newspapers. He turned and chewed at a flea on his tail. "Aw, come on, you old dog." Henry showed Ribsy the paper again. Ribsy glanced at it and settled himself with his nose on his paws. Henry threw the paper half a dozen times, but Ribsy paid no attention. Thinking how silly he must look throwing a paper and fetching it himself, while his dog watched, Henry held the journal behind his back. With his other hand, he picked up the sticks. "Ribsy, look!" he ordered. At the sight of the stick, Ribsy jumped to his feet. "Woof!" he said, wagging his tail expectantly. Henry pretended he was going to throw the stick. Instead, he threw the newspaper. Before he knew the difference, Ribsy bounded after it and caught it in his mouth. When the dog dropped the paper at his feet, Henry patted him. "Good dog, Ribsy," he said. "Good old Ribsy." Ribsy wriggled and wagged his tail with delight. The next time Henry threw the paper, he sprang to fetch it. "Good dog," Henry said approvingly. "I guess you're just about the smartest dog around here." The next day was Sunday. Henry, who always woke up earlier than his mom and father, decided to read the funnies in the newspaper. He tiptoed out to the porch, expecting to pick up the paper, as he always did. Instead, he stood staring in horror at what he saw. There was not just one newspaper on the doormat. There was a whole pile of them. Ribsy sat beside the newspapers, wagging his tail and looking very pleased with himself. "Oh," Henry groaned, "did you pick up all of these and bring them here?" he asked Ribsy in a whisper. Thump, thump, thump. Ribsy wagged his tail. Then he stood up and wagged his whole body. "Oh, you old dog," muttered Henry angrily as he counted the newspapers. There were 17 journals on his doormat. Fortunately, the other newspaper, the Oregonian, that newspaper carrier was late this morning. What if Ribsy had collected 2 kinds of newspapers and piled them on the doormat? Oh, 17 journals. Henry wondered how he could ever face Scooter, and now he wouldn't get to earn that money. He wouldn't get to deliver the papers when Scooter went to camp during summer vacation. But worst of all was the way Scooter would behave after this. He would never, ever forget that Henry's dog had got him in trouble with his journal customers. Henry scowled at Ribsy, who looked puzzled because he hadn't been praised for getting all those papers. Henry knew he had to think of something, and fast too. Then he remembered that Klickitat Street was just the beginning of Scooter's route, and because it was so early, Scooter was probably still out delivering papers. "Come on, Ribsy," he ordered, hurrying into his bedroom. He changed out of his pajamas into jeans and a sweater, and shoved his feet into some sneakers. He shut Ribsy in the room, grabbed the papers on the porch, except for the one copy which he tossed into the living room, and ran down the street as fast as he could to Scooter's house. No one on Klickitat Street was awake at that hour, and Henry was relieved to see the blinds still down on Scooter's house. He tiptoed up to the front steps, and after looking uneasily up and down the street and listening for sounds from within the house, he laid the 16 journal newspapers on the doormat. Then he ran home as fast as he could. After entering his house as quietly as he could, Henry threw himself on his bed, with a gasp of relief. No one had seen him. Scooter would never know how the 16 papers found their way back to his doormat. His money for the bike fund was safe. And that is where we're going to stop today. Hope you're enjoying this beautiful, beautiful sunny day and all of the signs of spring. All right, catch you later.